In the year 129 AC, the Dance of the Dragons, the Targaryen civil war for the Iron Throne, turned from a war of words to one of fire and blood that would bring the House of the Dragon to its knees, when Prince Aemond Targaryen, the second son of the late King Viserys and Alicent Hightower, killed his nephew, the second son of Rhaenyra Targaryen, Lucerys Velaryon, in the skies above Shipbreaker Bay. From that day henceforth, Aemond would forever be known as Aemond the Kinslayer to his foes. He returned to King's Landing, having won the support of Storm's End, and thus House Baratheon for his brother, King Aegon II, and the undying enmity and rage of his half-sister, Queen Rhaenyra. Aemond had thought to receive a hero's welcome upon his return to King's Landing. He was bitterly disappointed. Dowager Queen Alicent Hightower, his mother, went pale when she heard what he had done, crying, "Mother, have mercy on us all." Nor was Sir Otto Hightower, his grandfather, pleased. "You only lost one eye," he's reported to have said. "How could you be so blind?" The king himself, Aegon, did not share their concerns. He welcomed his brother home with a great feast, hailed him as the true blood of the dragon, and announced that he had made a good beginning. When Queen Rhaenyra sent her two eldest sons as envoys to the Lords of Westeros, her eldest, Prince Jace's Velaryon, had been given the longest and at the time thought most dangerous of the trips. Jace was first to fly on Dragonback to the Vale to treat with Lady Jane Arryn, before flying on to the north and Winterfell, the ancient seat of House Stark. When Jace's Velaryon descended upon the Eyrie on his young dragon Vermac to win the Vale of Arryn for his mother, he had no clue of the fate of his younger brother Lucerys on his own mission to Storm's End. The Maiden of the Vale, Lady Jane Arryn, 35 years of age, was 20 years his senior. Never wed, Lady Jane had reigned over the Vale since the death of her father and elder brothers at the hands of the Stonecrows of the Hills when she was 3. Given Rhaenyra's mother had been a member of House Arryn, Emma Arryn, the Blacks felt confident in her support, though as we know from their confidence with Boros Baratheon, that can never be a given. The account of the Full Mushroom tells us this famous maiden was in truth a high-born harlot, with a voracious appetite for men, and gives us salacious tales of how she offered Prince Jaehaerys the allegiance of the Vale only if he could bring her to climax with his tongue. However, Septon Eustace repeats the widespread rumour that Jane Arryn in fact preferred the intimate companionship of other women, but does go as far to state that there is no way to know if this is actually true. Grand Maester Munkin's true telling limits itself to the confines of the High Hall of the Eyrie, rather than the bedchambers, and it's through this source much of what occurred is known. "Thrice have my own kin sought to replace me," Lady Jane told Prince Jaceres. "My cousin Sir Arnold is wont to say that women are too soft to rule. I have him in one of my sky cells, if you would like to ask him. Your Prince Daemon used his first wife most cruelly, it is true, but notwithstanding your mother's poor taste in consort, she remains our rightful queen, and my own blood besides, and Arryn on her mother's side. In this world of men, we women must band together. The Vale and its knights shall stand with her, if her grace will grant me one request." When the prince asked what that might be, she answered, "Dragons. I have no fear of armies. Many and more have broken themselves against my bloody gate, and the Eyrie is known to be impregnable. But you have descended on us from the sky, as Queen Visenya once did during the conquest, and I am powerless to halt you. I mislike feeling powerless. Send me a dragon rider." And so the prince agreed, and Lady Jane knelt before him and bade her warriors to kneel, as all swore him their swords. Before he mounted his dragon for the long ride north, Jaceres sent word to Dragonstone of his success and the request of a dragon rider to be sent to the Vale in return for Lady Jane's support. Prince Jaceres and his dragon Vermax continued on their mission to negotiate with the Lords of Westeros on behalf of his mother, Queen Rhaenyra. After successfully gaining the support of Lady Jane Arryn and the Vale Lords, Jaceres Velaryon soared his way up north, across the Fingers and the waters of the Bight. Given how far he needed to travel to reach Winterfell, he stopped for a short time at the Sisters, at Sisterton, where Lord Borrell and Lord Sunderland did obedience to him and pledged him the support of the 3 sisters. While the Lords of the Sisters would have little involvement and little power to influence the outcome of the Dance of the Dragons, the support of more lords, be them big or small, was a welcome boost to the cause of Rhaenyra. After Sisterton, Jace then flew on to White Harbour, where Lord Desmond Manderley met him in the Merman's Court. While not the seat of power in the north, White Harbour is no less important than the ancient seat of House Stark. White Harbour is the only true city in the north, with it being a key part of the north's small but important naval assets and trade. Having House Manderley on side would be a huge boost regardless. But it was at White Harbour the prince faced a shrewder bargainer. White Harbour is not unsympathetic to your mother's plight, Lord Manderley declared. My own forebears were despoiled of their birthright when our enemies drove us into exile on these cold northern shores. When the old king Jaces visited us long ago, he spoke of the wrong that had been done to us and promised to make redress. In pledge of that, King Jaces had offered the hand of his daughter, Princess Visera, to my great-grandsire, that our two houses be made as one. But Visera died, and the promise was forgotten. It is said that Prince Jaces knew what was being asked of him before Lord Manderley had even finished talking. Before he left White Harbour on the road to Winterfell, a compact was drawn up and signed, by the terms of which Lord Manderley's youngest daughter would be wed to the prince's brother, Joffrey, once the war was over. After the long journey north, having won the support of House Arryn and House Manderley for his mother, Queen Rhaenyra, Jaceres Velaryon finally arrived at his most important destination, Winterfell, the ancient seat of House Stark. Whoever Lord Cregan Stark backed in the war would in principle win the support of the North as a whole. Cregan Stark, in time, would become known as the Old Man of the North, but the Lord of Winterfell was only 21 years of age when Prince Jaceres came to him in 129 AC. Cregan had come into his lordship at 13 upon the death of his father, Lord Rickon. During his minority, his uncle Bernard had ruled the north as regent, but in 124 AC, Cregan turned 16, only to find his uncle slow to surrender his power. Relations between the two grew strained, as the young lord chafed under the limitations imposed upon him by his father's brother. Finally, in 126 AC, Cregan Stark rose up, imprisoned Bernard and his 3 sons, and took the rule of the north into his own hands. Soon after, he wed Lady Arryn, a beloved companion since childhood, only to have her die 128 AC, whilst giving birth to a son and heir, whom Cregan named Rickon, after his father. Autumn was well advanced when Jaceres Velaryon arrived at Winterfell. The snows were laying deep upon the ground, and a cold wind was howling from the north, and Lord Stark was in the midst of his preparations for the coming winter. Yet he still gave Jaceres a warm welcome. Snow and ice and cold had made his dragon Vermax ill-tempered, it is said, so the prince did not linger long amongst the Northmen, but many curious tales came out of that short stay. The true telling of Maester Munkin tells us that Lord Cregan and Jaceres Velaryon took a great liking to each other very quickly, as Jace reminded the Lord of Winterfell of his own younger brother who had died 10 years before. They drank together, hunted together, trained together, and swore an oath of brotherhood sealed in blood. Maester Munkin's account seems a lot more realistic than that as set in Eustace, wherein the prince spent most of his visit attempting to persuade Lord Cregan to give up his false god and accept the worship of the Seven. But as usual, we must turn to the account of the full Mushroom, who we must note was never at Winterfell, to inform us of the more scandalous events that are rumoured to have happened during the prince's stay in the north. Mushroom's account includes a young maiden, or wolf girl as he dubs her, with the name of Sara Snow. So smitten was Prince Jaceres with this creature, a bastard daughter of the late Lord Rickon Stark, half-sister to Cregan, that he lay with her every night. On learning that his guest had claimed the maidenhead of his bastard sister, Lord Cregan became most wroth, and only softened when Sara Snow told him that the prince had taken her for his wife, that they had spoken their vows in the Winterfell's own godswood, before a heart tree, and only then had she given herself to him, wrapped in furs amidst the snows, as the old gods looked on. Whilst this does make for a charming tale, the singers have fallen in love with in the years since. But as with many of Mushroom's tales, it does seem to partake more of the fool's imaginings than historical truth. Jaceres Velaryon had been betrothed to his cousin, Vale Targaryen, since he was 4 and she 2, and from all we know of his character, it does seem very unlikely that he would break such a solemn agreement to protect the uncertain virtue of some half-wild, unwashed northern bastard. if indeed there ever lived a Sara Snow, and if indeed the Prince of Dragonstone lay with her daily, it is no more than any other prince has done in the past and will do in the future. But to talk of marriage seems a reach. However, in the matter of Sara Snow, all we can really say is this. We can never know the truth of it. But even if she is just a tale, she is an interesting tale at that. Mushroom also goes on to claim that Vermax have to clutch a dragon eggs at Winterfell. Whilst it is true that determining the gender of a living dragon is nigh on impossible, no other source mentions Vermax producing so much as a single egg, so it must be assumed that he was a male. Septon Barth, who studied the biology of dragons, speculates that dragons change sex at need, being as mutable as a flame. However, most maesters think this idea too ludicrous to consider, but even so, there is no record of a dragon egg ever being found around Winterfell. All we can say for sure of Jace's trip to Winterfell is that Cregan Stark and Jace's Velaryon reached an accord and signed and sealed the agreement that Grand Maester Munkin went on to call the Pact of Ice and Fire. Like many such pacts, it was to be sealed with a marriage. Lord Cregan's son Rickon was a year old. Prince Jaceres was as yet unmarried and childless, but it was assumed that he would sire children of his own once his mother sat upon the Iron Throne uncontested. Under the terms of the pact, the prince's firstborn daughter would be sent north at the age of 7 to be fostered at Winterfell until such a time as she was old enough to marry Lord Cregan's heir. And with that, Jace's Velaryon had won the support of House Stark and the North for his mother. Across Blackwater Bay on Dragonstone, Queen Rhaenyra collapsed when she was told of Lucerys' death. Luke's younger brother, Joffrey, swore a terrible oath of vengeance against Prince Aemond and Lord Boris Baratheon. His elder brother Jace had not yet heard of the news, still on his mission to treat with Cregan Stark in the north. Only the intervention of the boy's grandparents, the sea snake Corlys Velaryon, and Princess Rhaenys kept the boy from mounting his own small dragon at once and flying straight to the Red Keep. As the Black Council sat to consider how to strike back, a raven arrived from Harrenhal. It said one sentence: an eye for an eye, a son for a son. Prince Daemon Targaryen wrote, "Lucerys shall be avenged." Something important to recall is that in his youth, Daemon Targaryen had been the prince of the city, the captain of the Gold Cloaks, for it was him who had given them their cloak. His face and laugh, familiar to every cut-purse, whore and gambler in Fleabottom. That Daemon still had friends in the low places of King's Landing was a given, and followers amongst the Gold Cloaks still despised their captains and sergeants, being replaced by men loyal to Otto Hightower. Unbeknownst to King Aegon II, the Hand, Otto, and the Dowager Queen Alicent, he also had allies at court, even on the Green Council itself, and one other go-between, a special friend he trusted utterly, who knew the wine sinks and rat pits that festered in the shadows of the Red Keep, as well as Daemon himself, and moved easily through the shadows of the city. To this pale stranger, he reached out now by secret ways to set a terrible vengeance in motion. Amidst the stews of Fleabottom, Prince Daemon's go-between found suitable instruments for vengeance. One had been a sergeant in the city watch, big and brutal. He had lost his gold cloak for beating a whore to death whilst in a drunken rage. The other was a rat catcher in the Red Keep. Their true names are lost to history, but they are remembered as Blood and Cheese. According to the full Mushroom, Cheese knew the Red Keep better than the shape of his own cock. The hidden doors and secret tunnels that Maegor the Cruel had built were as familiar to the Ratcatcher as the rats he had hunted. There were even many he did not even know these secret ways existed. Using a forgotten passageway, Cheese led Blood into the heart of the castle, unseen by any guards. Some say their quarry was the king himself, but Aegon was always accompanied by the Kingsguard wherever he went. Even Cheese knew of no way in and out of Maegor's Holdfast, save over the drawbridge that spanned the dry moat and its formidable iron spikes. The Tower of the Hand was less secure, however. The two men crept up through the walls, bypassing the spearmen posted at the tower doors. Sir Otto's rooms were of no interest to them. Instead, they slipped into his daughter's chambers, one floor below. Dowager Queen Alicent had taken up residence there after the death of King Viserys, when her son Aegon had moved into Maegor's Holdfast with his own queen. Once inside, Cheese bound and gagged the Dowager Queen, whilst Blood strangled her bedmaid to death. They then settled down to wait, for they knew it was the custom of Queen Helaena to bring her children to see their grandmother every evening before bed. Blind to her danger, the queen appeared as dusk was setting over the castle, accompanied by her 3 children, the twins Jaehaerys and Jaehaera, who were 6, and the baby Maelor, who was 2 years old. As they entered the apartments, Helaena was holding his little hand, calling out her mother's name. Blood barred the door and slew the queen's guardsmen, while Cheese appeared to snatch up Maelor. "Scream and you all die," Blood told her grace. Queen Helaena kept her calm, it is said. "Who are you?" she demanded of the 2 debt collectors, said Cheese. "An eye for an eye, a son for a son. We only want the one. To square things. Won't hurt the rest of you fine folk. Not one little hair. Which one you want to lose, your grace?" Once she realized what he meant, Queen Helaena pleaded with the men to kill her instead. "A wife is not a son," said Blood. "It has to be a boy." Cheese warned the queen to make a choice soon, before Blood grew bored and raped her little girl. "Pick," he said, "or we kill them all." On her knees weeping, Helaena named her youngest Maelor. Perhaps she thought the boy was too young to understand. Or perhaps it was because the older boy, Jaehaerys, was King Aegon's firstborn son and heir, next in line to the Iron Throne. "You hear that, little boy?" Cheese whispered to Maelor. "Your mama wants you dead." Then he gave Blood a grin, and the hulking swordsman slew Prince Jaehaerys, striking off the boy's head with a single blow. The queen began to scream. Strange to say, the Ratcatcher and the Butcher were true to their word. In that moment, they could have killed Alicent, Helaena, and all of King Aegon's children, but they did no further harm, but rather fled with the prince's head in hand. A hue and a cry went up, but Cheese knew the secret passages as the guards did not, and the killers made their escape.